All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your question, go ahead and either post it. It's going to be below the video if you're on a mobile device, or if you are on like a laptop computer, desktop computer, something like that, should be to the right of the video where you can post your question. So if you're new to office hours, I always start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So it looks like we got a couple questions in here already from William N. and Rod P. Those are going to be the questions I'm starting with. After I got one thing I want to talk about real quick, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But if you're someone who posted a question, Davis M., Timothy R., Brian K. So some of these questions came in after yesterday's office hours. So if you're here and you want to get those questions answered, go ahead and just copy and paste your question in there, and it will get answered later on in the office hours. The reason why I do that is I just want to make sure that I'm answering questions for those who are presently here to see them get answered. You know, if someone asks a question at midnight, 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that, I don't know if they're here or not to get them answered. So I just kind of want to reward the people who are here presently and asking their questions live. So if you got your questions, go ahead and post them in there. So I want to talk about a question that I get quite often, and that's about what is the proper grip pressure, or what is the grip pressure throughout the swing with a driver. Now, with a driver, it's not going to be much different than it is with like an iron or something like that, but there is going to be more pressure being put into the club because there's going to be more speed. There's more forces involved when you are swinging your driver, right? So if you take your 7-iron, your average PGA Tour player swings their 7-iron, I think roughly about 94 miles per hour, somewhere in that area. And then they swing their driver roughly about 113 miles per hour on average. So there's going to be, in order to hold on to this club, I have to put more pressure into it when it has more speed because there's more forces involved there. So basically, to answer this question in the most simplest way, and then we'll get into the details a little bit here, but the most simplest way to think about this, as far as how much pressure you should be putting into the grip, is you want to put the smallest amount of pressure that still allows you to control the club and feel the club head. So we don't want to put a death grip on this club so much that we can't feel the club head, right? So if you have a club handy right now, just take the club and just rip it as hard as you can and kind of swing that club around. It's a little bit harder to feel the club head. Now give it like a really loose kind of grip. Now you can feel that club head feels a lot heavier, right? So it's a lot easier to feel this face. In order to control this face, we need to be able to feel it. So if you're at address here and you've got a death grip on this club, it's going to be difficult to control it. You're kind of already in trouble there a little bit, all right? So that's really what we need to be doing. And then throughout the swing, intuitively, you will have you handy. What you can do is you just hold this club out in front of you like this and have your buddy kind of pull on it from you. So just hold it with a light grip, just light enough to kind of hold it up like that, and then have your buddy kind of do a tug of war and try to pull it away from you in order to hold on to it so he doesn't take it from you, right? You're going to do that intuitively to make that happen. It's starting to, for some reason, keeps telling me that my connection's not good. So let me close a few things here, and hopefully that will improve what's going on. Might have too many things open, and that's why it's telling me that. So just bear with me here. All right. Sorry, just closing a bunch of stuff here. All right, don't want to lose too many. So hopefully that fixes it, and we're not being bogged down anymore. So all right, so let's go get into the details a little bit as to what's actually going on in each hand throughout the swing. So basically, if I have a ball here, right, and I'm going to throw this ball with my right hand, this is kind of the motion that's happening in the golf swing, right? We're getting up to the top, and then we're coming. It's kind of like a side-arm throw as we're coming through. So think about when the pressure that I'm going to put into this golf ball is going to be the greatest, right? So I'm up here. It's probably, and I don't really like to think it's hard to say it's a 2 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10 or things like that because feelings are all relative. I'm going to tell you kind of what I feel. So at address, essentially, I'm feeling probably about a 2 out of 10, maybe a 3 out of 10 at most, right? And then as I bring this club up to the top, that's raising up because I have to put pressure into this handle as I'm going up to the top, right? So now I'm getting into like a 3, 4, and so on and so forth. So that pressure as the speed is going up, as I'm bringing this club up to the top, that pressure is happening. And again, that's happening naturally. I'm not thinking I need to put more pressure into this handle as I'm going up. That's happening naturally as I'm trying to hold on to this club as I'm bringing it up. If I had a 2 out of 10 and I try to keep that constant, I'm going to kind of go like that as I go up. I'm not going to be able to hold on to it, right? So intuitively, I'm going to put more pressure into that grip as I'm going up to the top. So I would say at the top here, I'm probably feeling in both hands, I'm probably feeling about 4 or 5 out of 10 at the top of the swing here. That's just relative to me. Again, it's hard to say what you're going to feel in your swing because feelings are relative, right? So as I'm coming down in my right hand, I'm going to feel more pressure in my right hand. Now, this may seem counterintuitive because you might think, well, aren't you going to cast if you do that? And that's not necessarily true. I can put more pressure into this handle and not go like that. The problem is with people who cast is that they're putting their wrist in the wrong position. They're throwing with the wrist. I'm putting more pressure into it. So if I'm holding a ball here and I'm going to throw it, I'm not going to go like that, like right when I'm starting to throw. I'm going to kind of hold my wrist kind of back, right? And then I'm going to flick my wrist and kind of throw it down here. That's if I'm doing a sidearm throw, that's essentially what I'm trying to do, right? So I got that wrist kind of bent back, and then I'm throwing that through. People who cast the club are going like this right away. They're throwing that right away. So I'm putting more pressure into this as I'm starting down. My pressure is probably maxing out right in this area, and then I'm letting it go. Now, after I let that go, through this whole process, I'm putting pressure in with the left hand, but it's not as much as the right hand. And my left hand, you can kind of think of it as in this section of the swing, it's kind of along for the ride a little bit, but you're still putting pressure to hold on to the club and for stability and everything. So as I'm coming down here and I'm putting more pressure in with this trail hand, now I'm going to kind of throw that as I'm coming through contact. And when I throw that, when I'm kind of letting go with that trail hand, now my lead hand has to take over that pressure and that speed that's going on there. And you're going to feel that in those first 3 fingers of that lead hand. And again, that's going to happen intuitively. You're not, if you don't do that, you're going to throw the club, right? You're just going to send that club flying into the ground. And you're intuitively not going to do that, right? So in order to hold on to that club intuitively, you're going to put more pressure in that lead hand. And that trail hand through impact is going to have very little pressure. In fact, you'll see some players like a Vijay Singh, Freddie Couples, I've seen Phil Mickelson, who comes through contact and their right hand, or their trail hand, is actually kind of coming off of the club. You'll see the grip is so light with that trail hand that's actually coming off of the club as you're coming through contact. So that's what happens when you have proper sequencing and things like that. People who struggle with grip pressure throughout the swing have poor sequencing, or they have poor wrist movements throughout the swing, and which could also be caused by poor sequencing. So if you're casting the club, right, you may be putting too much pressure into that grip too early because you're basically throwing it from right here, and 2, you're not trying to throw it here, you're trying to throw it back here. So one thing that you can kind of do to help with that is what I would call as a little pistol drill. So what you do is you just take your pointer and your thumb here, and you keep those off the grip because that's really where you're putting the most pressure into it. So try to keep those off the grip there, bring that club up to the top, and as you're starting down, you're going to feel how you're going to need to come in about in this area and put your thumbs back on the grip and throw it. So I would wait until you get down to about right here, put your thumb and finger on the grip, and then kind of feel like you're throwing it. But when we do that, we need to make sure that we're rotating, right? We need to make sure that we're getting that good weight shift and we're starting that downswing correctly. If we're not, then we're just going to want to grab it and throw it right here. We need to get that throw happening out in front, right? We need that to throw it out in front, not throw it at the golf ball, but throw that out in front. That's the feeling that you need to have when you're doing that. So That's essentially grip pressure. And then as you're coming through contact here with this lead hand, you're going to have a ton of grip pressure in that lead hand. You're really going to be putting kind of a death grip, but just for that split second, essentially, as you're coming through contact, because that's where the most speed is happening right here. And your lead hand is doing all of the work, is doing most of the work there to hold on to that club. And again, that's in the first three fingers, your pinky, ring, and middle finger here in that lead hand. And then after contact, then that pressure goes all the way down as the speed goes down, right? So now I'm back to like a 4 or 5 out of 10, and now I'm up at the top. And again, I'm at about a 2 out of 10 at the top of the swing, 3 out of 10 at the top of the swing, holding that club up there. So hopefully that helps you understand what grip pressure is happening throughout the swing. All right, so let's answer some of the other questions here. So William N says, any advice on stopping wrist flipping during chip and pitch shots? Yeah, so we can talk about that a little bit. So here's what I would recommend doing. Let me put a ball down here, and I'll angle this camera down so you can see. So the easiest way to stop this kind of flippy sensation, where we're coming in and we're going like this through contact, is to make sure we're getting our legs involved, right? So if it's a really, really short kind of chip or pitch, it's just 10 yards or something like that. It's just a little chip. We're just trying to get the ball rolling. A lot of people that like to use this kind of chipping motion or putting motion, when they're chipping. And that works fine if it's kind of a short kind of swing and there's just not a lot of speed involved, because I can hold my wrists, right, like this, and I can not flip, right? But once speed gets involved, once I get it to where it's back here, if I'm trying to do a putting motion, it's back here, I'm going to want to flip because there's just forces involved there. So what we want to do for those kind of longer chips and pitches is we need to get our body pivoting and rotating around. So that way we can release that club out in front, right? We can release that. We can get it releasing out in front very, very nicely. Whereas if I have my body locked up, I'm going to want to release that early. If I get my body moving, I'm going to want to easily release that nicely out in front. So allow these knees to move around, allow your hips to pivot back and forth, and that's going to make it a lot easier to get that club to release out in front and have a little bit of forward shaft lean at contact. Have your hands a little bit ahead of the golf ball at contact. That's going to really stabilize your pitching and chipping. Now, one thing that I think really makes this a lot easier is to set up pre-open. So with a pitch or a chip shot, we don't need to get a full shoulder turn, right? We're not going for power here. We're going for more, we don't need to get a full shoulder turn to get the speed that we need to hit this shot. It's typically going to be a pitch shot's usually no more than this right here, right? And I can make basically a 3/4 swing here with my body already pre-opened up. And what this allows you to do is this makes it a lot easier to rotate through contact, right? So if you imagine if I was going to toss that ball over there, it's perpendicular to my toe line here. If I was to toss the ball over that way, it'd be a lot easier if I was like this, right? If you're playing beanbag toss, right, or cornhole or something like that, you don't throw the cornhole bag like this. You throw it like this. You open up. It's a lot easier to do that. So that's kind of what we're doing when we're pitching and chipping, is we want to get the body opened up to make it a lot easier to get it to go out that way. Otherwise, I'm going to want to release it right here if I don't pivot and I don't let my body open up. So it just makes it a lot easier. So 1, let the body move, let the body pivot around. And then 2, pre-open the body to make it a lot easier to pivot and come around. And then that's going to make it so much easier to get the hands out in front and allow this to release out in front very nicely. So try that the next time you go out pitching and chipping. And I think it will help out quite a bit for you. So Rod P says, could you go over the axe drill? I'm having trouble understanding how the blade meets the ball square and not pointing like an axe. Cool. Yeah. So I can go over that. So the axe drill, it's a very, very good drill to help you understand the feeling of how the body is moving into contact. Now, this is mainly for the body. And the reason why you're having trouble maybe understanding how this works a little bit as far as squaring up the face and things like that is that this drill is not about how you're squaring up the face into contact. This drill is about getting your body to work in the right way. So let me go over that part, and then we'll talk about, and it can also help you with the face squaring, because let me just get into it. So this axe drill, essentially what you're doing, let me angle this down a little bit. Essentially what you're doing is you're starting with the club face down like this. So it's almost like you're chopping a piece of wood, right, with the club. So you're setting up like this with the club head pointing down, and then you're going to go up to the top, and you're going to come into contact with this, like you're hitting the ball like an axe as you're coming into contact. What that does, look at that position. It puts intuitively, that's what I'm going to do with my body, right? Intuitively, I'm going to do this to get that club in that axe position as I'm coming into contact. And now look at that. I look like a tour player right here. Tons of forward shaft lean. My body's really opening up. My elbow's kind of into my side. Typically, what you're going to see with your amateur players, you're going to see something like this when they're coming into contact, right? All the body's completely square. My shoulders are kind of moving away from the golf ball. I'm flipping through contact, and I'm adding a lot of loft. But if you have this sensation, okay, I'm going to turn that club head around, and I've got to get this club head coming in like an axe like this, intuitively, I'm going to put my body in this position right here. So this just proves, hey, I can get my body into this position just like this, like I'm chopping a piece of wood with an axe. And now all I got to do is learn how to square up the face from this position. Because what I'm really doing, right, in order to get that into that position is I'm opening the face. But that's getting my body in the right position. So now what we need to do, once we get that sensation with the body, now let's flip the club back around, and let's get that same sensation with the body, and let's come in with a square club face and see how my wrist motion is different. Now I'm doing this with my wrist. I'm bowing the lead wrist. With the trail wrist, I'm bending it back. That's called wrist extension. And that's closing the face or squaring up the face in this sensation. Because in that drill, you're opening the face to get into that X position. But you're getting your body in the correct position. That's what it's training. Now, once you get that body position correct, now let's get that club face position correct. Now, sometimes this can be beneficial for people even with squaring the face, because what you have to do to get that club in that axe position is open the face. And when you're flipping the club, what you're doing is you're coming into contact and you're rolling this face over hard through contact. That's typically what's going on. When you look from down the line, a lot of times it looks like this. I'm coming in, this face is kind of open, and then I come into contact, and I'm really rolling my hands over. You see your trail hands really on top of the club as I'm coming through to square this face up at contact, right? So it's a different sensation, because now with this axe drill, I'm coming in, if I get that axe right, I'm coming in and I'm actually getting my hands, doing the opposite. My hands are rotating that way. So it's an opposite sensation, because a lot of times what happens when people work on and getting forward shaft lean, they may actually get to where their body's starting to move correctly, but at the last second, they like to do this motion because that's what they're used to squaring the face. We have to change the motor pattern to do that. So this drill can actually help you to do that as well, because a lot of people, they just start smother hooking the ball whenever they start working on this stuff, because they're still flipping through contact. They get things started good. They get the club shallowing. They get the club face squaring earlier, but then they do the same thing right at the golf ball when things speed up. They come into contact. They roll the hands over, so they square the face early, and they roll the hands over hard, right? And now the face is closed at contact instead of square. I'm still flipping, and I'm coming more from the inside. So I'm just going to hit that big snap hook, smother hook. So this drill can help you to get that sensation of actually kind of holding that face through contact, because it's a sensation that you may not have, right? Your sensation with this, the move, which is basically what the axe drill is working on, the move on the website, is we're squaring that face earlier in the swing. Well, you're not used to that, right? You're used to squaring that face right at the golf ball. What you're doing in the move is you're squaring that face earlier, and if you square the face earlier and then try to square the face at the golf ball, you're just going to come in with your club face slammed shut. So it's basically squaring the club face early, and then we're kind of holding that through contact. but you may need to feel like you're squaring that face early and then almost opening the face when you're coming into contact to square it up. It's a feeling. It's not a reality. It's just a feeling. So the fault is we're squaring the face earlier, and then we're squaring the face. We're basically closing the face because we're used to rolling the face over hard through contact usually. The feel is that we're squaring the face earlier, and then the feel might be that we're actually opening the face, and that's kind of what we're doing in that axe drill, because we're starting out like this, we're coming in, and then we're coming in like that. So my wrists are kind of turning like that to get into the axe position. So that's actually opening the face. So that's the feel. The reality is that we're squaring the face earlier, and hopefully we're just kind of holding that face square all the way through contact. And that's basically what a lot of tour players are doing. That's how they're able to be very consistent. They're coming in, they have very, very stable contact because they're coming in, they're rotating into contact. They're coming in with the face that's not going from open to close so quickly. And they're coming in and they have their hands ahead of the golf ball at contact, which is allowing them to have the force leading the mass. The force being the what you're putting into the handle here, being the mass, and the mass being the club head here. That allows for really, really stable contact and consistent contact. So that's why the axe drill is very, very effective. If you want to try this out, there's actually it's a drill on the website. Go check it out. It's called, just search the word axe and you'll find it. There might actually be a few videos where Clay does this axe drill. But yeah, it's if you just search the word axe in the upper right-hand corner, if you're on just a regular desktop, laptop, computer, you'll find a little search box there. Search the word axe. You can find this drill. It's a very cool drill. If you're struggling forward shaftling, you're struggling getting your body to be into this position and rotating through contact, it's a great drill to kind of get that proper feeling of what you need to be doing. And if you're on a mobile device, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a little icon there. It's 3 horizontal lines. If you select that, that will expand a menu. If you scroll down to the bottom of that menu, you'll also find the search engine there. So check out the axe drill. It's a really good one. But if you find that you're getting into these body positions and you are leaving the club face wide open, you're getting forward shaftling, then you just need to feel like, okay, I need to square this face earlier. Now I'm getting in the right body position. Now I need to square this face earlier by turning that handle and by bowing that lead wrist, bending back that trail wrist. And that's going to help you get into that proper position there, that good impact position with a square face at contact. All right. So Richard S. says, morning Q, can you please explain being open or closed at the top of the backswing and which way should the face be? So I assume you're talking about the face being open or closed at the top of the backswing. So basically what that means is if we look at the lead wrist, right, that basically is what kind of dictates that the face is open or closed. Now your grip is going to dictate that. If you have a really strong grip, it can look like your face is open at the top, but it's really square or maybe even closed. If you have a very weak grip, it can look like your face is closed at the top, but it's actually open. So a lot of it is dictated by your grip. But typically when you see tour players go up to the top of the swing, what you like to see is this club face. If you're at the top of the swing here, you like to see that club face being a little bit more closed to basically my forearm, right? So I'm trying to make it easier for you to kind of see. There we go. So if I have it like that, you can see that that's kind of that angle of my face. The leading edge of the face is kind of even with the forearm. So that would be considered basically dead square, right? So if I have it more like that, right? So now you can see the club face is more pointed up and in relationship to my forearm. That would be considered more closed. That's kind of a flat wrist. Let me check my grip here. So yeah, I have kind of a neutral grip here, and I have kind of a flat-ish grip, a flat-ish or just slightly blowed wrist at the top. That's kind of going to be a closed club face at the top in relationship to my forearm. Now, if I have it like this, very, very cupped, now you can see my forearm is going like this, and the shaft, the leading edge is basically straight up and down. You can see that a little bit easier against my wall there, right? So now the leading edge there is basically straight up and down. So that'd be considered an open face. In reality, where the face is at the top of the swing isn't that big a deal. It only matters how it's being presented to the golf ball. It only matters that the face is square at the golf ball. That's the only thing that matters. So whatever you're doing at the top of the swing just needs to help you to get that face square at contact. So a lot of times when we see slicers, a lot of times their wrists are in this kind of position. There's just a lot more that you have to do in the downswing to get that club face to square up. So if someone's slicing and they have really cupped wrist, lead wrist at the top of the swing, when I say cupped, I mean wrist extension, where you got this angle right here. And that trail wrist is also typically kind of in a flat position there. Well, that face is kind of in a wide open position. If I don't make any changes and I just bring that club into contact, look at my face, it's wide open. So there's just a lot more that I have to do to get that club face to square up. If I have this face kind of already in this position right here, where my wrist is bowed, if you look at Dustin Johnson, right? So Dustin Johnson's like this at the top of the swing. He's got that face actually really closed. And he actually kind of opens the face a little bit when he comes into contact. His wrist is not like this at contact. If you look at Dustin Johnson, his wrist isn't like this. His wrist is kind of slightly bowed when he comes into contact. So he's actually taking that face and he's kind of releasing it with his wrist. He's kind of opening a little bit. So he's starting with it closed, and then he's kind of opening it a little bit as he's coming into contact. So like I said, it only matters how you bring the club into contact. But it's easier for most people to have this face kind of already in a square position, and then to essentially have that to rotate into contact and keep that face square when you come into contact, right? So have it square here. It's going to be easier typically to get it into impact with a square club face. But it doesn't mean that you have to have it that way. Like I said, you look at Dustin Johnson, he's got that face really, really close. He has to do something. He has to unbow his wrist just a little bit coming into contact to square that up. If you look at Freddie Couples is at the top of the swing with a cupped lead wrist. He has to really start bowing his wrist, doing kind of this action when he's coming down into contact to get that club face to square up. Typically what you're going to see with most players is that wrist is basically in more of a flat position at the top, and there's just not a lot of manipulation that they need to do with their wrist to come into contact. You're not going to see tour players at contact with their wrist like this, right? But we see amateurs all the time with the wrist like this at contact, right? I see it every day, basically, where amateur players are like this at contact. Well, some of them are like this at address, or not at address, but at the top of the swing. Some of them are flat and then just get into this position at contact. But it just makes it easier if you're in a flatter position. So if you're a slicer with the ball, you're having trouble getting that club face to square up at contact, you're leaving the face open a lot, look at your wrist at the top. It could be, and this is a fairly easy thing to change at the top of the swing, which is why I don't mind people working on it, because it's happening slowly enough. Because typically what happens is you get up at the top of the swing and then you just get into this kind of position right here. So you can get there's all kinds of training aids out there. You can get there's a training aid that clicks whenever you put it on your wrist, and it'll click if you get your wrist bent or flat, right? It'll click when it goes from flat to bent every single time. So that'll give you some sensation of what's going on. You can actually, I don't have a glove in here, but you can take your glove and you can put a T, you can put the Velcro over that and put a T, so where it'll kind of poke you if you do this at the top of the swing. So if I have that, if I put that strap over that T and put the pointy side in there, I'm going to feel that poking me every single time. I tell you what, you might do that a couple times and you won't do it anymore after it gouges you a couple times, right? So that can help you to keep that wrist nice and flat. So like I said, if you're struggling with that face being open at contact, it might be beneficial to try to get that face nice, or try to get that that lead wrist more square at contact. Maybe even strengthening the grip a little bit. And by that I mean turning your hand kind of like this on the grip, getting the V. So when we talk about the V, I'm talking about that's this crease between my thumb and my hand here. If I have a weak grip, that's going to be basically pointing up to my chin. The stronger grip is going to be pointing more to my right shoulder over here. So that can also help you to square the face a little bit. And that way at the top, if I have a flat wrist at the top, my face is kind of closed here at the top. I can have a little bit of bow in that, or a little bit of cupping in that wrist, and my face is actually pretty square. So strengthening your grip can help with that as well. All right, so David C says, I seem to lose my posture every time I make ball contact with last second raise up and flip. Just can't seem to find the feeling staying in posture throughout the swing. Any tips to find that feeling so I can duplicate? Yeah, so what I'd recommend, most likely what you're doing is you're coming down steep. Now, David, it's hard for me to say without seeing your swing exactly, but I can tell you what I see most of the time with people who are standing up and flipping. And what I see most of the time is it's a steep downswing. And what I mean by that is when we're coming down in the downswing, this club gets kind of in a steep position, more in a vertical position. When I have this club like this, it's off plane, right? It's the club head is above the plane. My club plane's somewhere in this area, right? So to get this club back on plane, what I can do is I can stand up. And when I stand up, that club now drops down onto plane. But the problem is I stood up and I have to flip to get to the golf ball. So it's a mechanism, it's a compensation for you to be able to hit the golf ball straight from this steep position, because otherwise it's better than the alternative. The alternative is to have this club in a steep position and to kind of continue kind of over the top like this, or to have this club in a steep position, stay in your posture and just throw this club into the ground behind the golf ball, like 2 feet behind the golf ball. Intuitively, almost nobody's going to do that. The only people I've ever seen do that are pretty much total beginners who don't really have just a feel for their ground contact and things like that. Basically, anyone who's an established golfer who I see who starts out steep, they almost always make this compensation in the downswing to get that club to come back on plane, right? So what we want to do is we want to start getting this club shallowed out. So that's going to be working through the move course. The move course is going to help you to get this club shallowed out and help you to get this face squaring earlier. Because what happens is that when we drop this head down, usually this face is wide open. So at contact, I really have to flip my hands to square it up at contact. So I'm standing up and I'm flipping and rolling hard through contact. That's to allow me to hit the ball straight. But like I said, it's just not going to be very powerful because you're adding a lot of loft to the face, right? And you're going to be at these kind of spinny, weak shots. They're going to go straight, and you can play great golf doing that. You're just not going to be very long doing that, right? You're not going to be compressing the ball as much as someone who has as much speed as you, but is shallowing out the club, squaring that face earlier, and rotating into contact. So what you likely need to do is you need to work on the move course, which is going to help you to get this club shallowing out. So now I got this club up here, and then I'm coming down and I'm shallowing this club out. Now I don't have to make any kind of compensation. This club is on plane, and I can just start to square this face up and rotate into contact and stay in my posture. I don't have to make a compensation there. And also, the move course is going to get you to where you're starting to square the face early, because maybe you are getting this club to shallow out, but this club face is coming down and it's wide open, right? So it's like this. I've got the club shallowed out, the face is wide open, and now I've got to square this at the last second. In order to do that, I have to flip and roll the face over hard to make that happen. So the move course is going to get you shallowing out the club and then squaring that face earlier in the swing so that you can stay in your posture and rotate into impact. So a good drill from the move course is called the tennis racket drill. And I've got a tennis racket right here. And the reason why we want to use a tennis racket for this is that it makes it so much easier to see where the club head is or see where the club face is in space. So if I look at this club head, one, it's basically impossible to see where the shaft is pointing, right? Because it's round. I can't tell if that's the front of the shaft or if that is, when it's out in space. It's really impossible to say. And then also, it's hard to see where the club face, because it's got loft on it. It's just hard to see. When I have this tennis racket, there's no doubt in my mind, this is the front of the shaft, right? This is the club face. I can very easily see what's going on here. So what I'll do is I'll set up as if I'm going to hit a golf ball, and I'm going to go up to the top of the swing. First, I'm going to try and get these tennis racket strings to be pointing up to the sky, and then I'm also going to try to square that face by turning that handle. And that's coming from my lead wrist, doing this motion, which is wrist flexion, right? So that's like the DJ bow at the top. That's that wrist flexion right there. And then my trail wrist, this is very important, is going in wrist extension. A lot of people are just talking about that lead wrist bowing. You got to have both. The hands have to work together. I can't bow my lead wrist without my trail wrist going into extension, where that's knuckles back kind of position. They have to work together to make that happen. So I'm going up to the top. and I'm shallowing out the club and I'm squaring the face earlier. So that's going to look something like this. And I'm rotating into contact. So that looks something like this as I'm coming down. So now the fault that you're probably having is where you're like this, right? So steep, the face is open. What we want to do is shallow and face square. So I've got the strings pointing more up the sky, and I've got the strings pointing more toward the camera. And to show you from this angle, that's from turning that handle like that. And now I can continue to rotate into contact, and now I have tons of forward shaft lean, and the club face is square. That club face is dead square at contact. I don't have to flip to square it up late. That face is already square. I can just rotate, get my hands in front of the ball, and get that good compression on there. So go to the move course and start working on that, and you'll be able to see. I mean, work on that drill. I recommend working through all the drills in the move course, but that tennis racket drill is one that we hear feedback time and time again that this is the best, one of the best drills on the website. So check that out. If you don't have a tennis racket, no big deal. You can use a normal club. I just think that this is great to get a great visual of what the club head and the shaft are doing throughout the downswing. And you can also do it inside. Like I'm not going to knock over a lamp with this, or most likely, I'm less likely to put a hole through my drywall with this tennis racket as I am with a club, right? So, you can pick up it, even if you don't play tennis, you can pick up a tennis racket at like Walmart or Target or something like that. I'm sure for basically nothing. I think they're like 15, 20 bucks at most. So that's a cheap training aid a lot of the time. So you can get that proper sensation, that feeling of doing that. So try out that tennis racket drill from the move course. To get to the move course, all you have to do is go to the house icon at the top of the page, select that. That's going to take you to the home page. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses that we offer on the website. And then select the move course, and then you'll see the tennis racket drill. It's 1.3 in the move course is the tennis racket drill. All right. So Max S says, at the top of the swing, you guys talk about clearing the hips and pulling up instead of pushing, flipping through. Can you chat about that? Yeah, so basically I just chatted about that. That's all of what I just mentioned. You're rotating, you're squaring that face earlier, you're shallowing out the club. Because if you get this club in a steep position and you have the club face open, you're basically forced to kind of push the club through and flip the club through. If I have this club shallowed out and the face squared earlier, I'm going to want to rotate into contact and pull the club through. So work on the move course. That's really what's going to help you with that, as well as the straight line release course. All right, so Lee J says, good morning. I got a new driver and I can't middle it. Big sky shots at times, too flexible shaft. I'm working on the power move, but this was not an issue before I thought. It's hard to say without seeing your swing. I'm not sure if you got fitted or not, but honestly, whenever you buy a driver, it needs to be better than what you previously had, and you need to know that. So that's what I recommend doing, is getting fitted for a driver, just because it's one of the most important clubs in your bag, and I'm not sure if you got fitted or not, but I would imagine it doesn't sound like you were fitted, because you should be hitting the new driver better, right? So, but if you're hitting sky shots, it could be a little bit of the shaft. You're just having trouble timing up that shaft. If it's a new and different shaft, a lot of times I find a shaft that I like, and I use that for as long as they keep making it. Sometimes they discontinue shaft models, but now I just try to find something that's very similar. Typically, if I get a new driver, I'm not doing a new different shaft every single time. I'm trying to get, if it's a head that's maybe a little bit better, I'll try to get a shaft that most closely or is the same shaft that I had before, so that it's not much different. But really recommend getting fitted so that you don't run into these issues. But if you're skying shots, what's likely going on is, one, you're either just having trouble timing the shaft and timing this new shaft, and you probably just need to get used to it. Or what may be going on is you're kind of sliding forward, right? So when you slide forward, our low point moves further forward, right? So when I'm talking about the low point, I'm talking about when this club comes down, reaches a low point, and then works back up, right? So if I'm coming into contact and that low point, if I'm hitting a ball off of a tee, if that low point's basically at the golf ball, I'm gonna hit probably a lot of sky shots unless I'm kind of pulling up on it. Whereas if I'm getting that low point with the driver, because the ball's teed up further, my low point's hitting more close to the middle of my swing, right, or the middle of my stance, and then it's starting to work up into the golf ball. That's what I want. So when we talk about the compression line, I'm talking about the line from your lead ankle, hip, and shoulder. We want that to be slightly angled away from the target. With the driver, it can be a little bit more angled away, right? So I want to get to where I'm more angled away coming into the golf ball. That's going to allow me to stay behind it and hit up on the golf ball. If I'm like this, I'm going to be kind of hitting down on the golf ball, or my club's going to be bottoming out at the golf ball. I'm going to hit sky shots. So try to keep your nose kind of behind the golf ball and have the sensation of hitting up on it through contact, and that should help. So Rod P says, great explanation of axe drill. Thanks, no problem, Rod. Glad I could help. So Mark C says, do you need a full shoulder turn to take a divot in front of the golf ball? No, but I recommend having a full shoulder turn. Because that's going to be your best source of power, is getting that good shoulder turn, that back turning away from the target. I know it can feel uncomfortable to turn your back to the target, but that's really what all the best, most powerful players do. Anybody that hits the ball a long way is turning their back to the target to some extent. Now I know there's some players out there like a Tony Finau or Jon Rahm, or players like that don't get as big a turn as some other players, but really they're still getting a 90-degree turn. And they're both swinging 120 miles per hour, basically. If they made a bigger turn, they would swing faster, but they make a smaller turn and swing 120 miles per hour. So we're not all built like Jon Rahm and Tony Finau, right? Tony Finau, I think, is like 6'4", really super athletic, strong guy. So there's definitely some differences there. There's a reason why I can swing the club further than a 5-year-old kid, right? Not saying you're a 5-year-old kid, or that Tony Finau can swing the club a lot faster than me. It's not necessarily, there's a strength there, but there's also athleticism, his mechanics, and things like that go into that as well. So, and really, Tony Finau actually posted a video on social media, I think it was last year, where he was watching the long drive. And he went out and he took a big full shoulder turn similar to a long drive guy, and he swung 136 miles per hour. So he typically swings low 120s, and he gained 15 miles per hour by making a full shoulder turn. So those guys, they could swing faster if they wanted to. Now, if you can swing 120 miles per hour with a swing that looks like this, then by all means do that. I mean, if I could do that, I would probably do it too. But yeah, I need a full shoulder turn to hit it 120 yards. But as far as a divot is concerned, I mean, I can take a swing like this and take a divot in front of the golf ball. The divot is dictated mostly by your low point, right? So my low point being ahead of the golf ball, that's where I need it to happen. So I can make ball first contact, and then the club works down into the ball, and then nothing after that. So that's what I need to happen, is I need that low point to be forward. So if you're struggling with divots, you're probably hanging back a little bit too much, or you're releasing this club too early. When you release the club early, so if I'm coming in, here's my golf ball, I'm reaching my low point at the golf ball, basically, I'm releasing that club early. My low point has to be at the golf ball, basically, if I'm releasing the club early, because the club's coming in so shallow with the turf, so level with the turf, that, or even up on the golf ball sometimes, that if I hit the ground at all, I'm going to chunk it, right? So that's most likely what's going on. So, the move course and the compression line course are both going to help you to get that low point more forward, and even the lag course, because if you're casting the club, right, I'm also going to release that club early. So if you don't have any lag in your swing, you're doing this right from the very beginning of the swing, you're basically shallowing, really, really coming in too shallow, and you're going to have a hard time taking divots. So look at those pieces of the Top Speed Golf System. Look at your swing on video. Look at those pieces of the Top Speed Golf System, and then see what you need to do there. To get to the Top Speed Golf System, go to the top of the page, hover your mouse over the instruction tab, that'll expand a little menu there, and then you can select Top Speed Golf System and whichever one you think you need to work on based on what you're seeing on video with your swing. So Cameron F says, thanks for the extra explanation. It's the first time I've really understood what's going on with the move. No problem, Cameron. Glad I could help. So Keith R says, thanks for the tee and glove suggestion. No problem. Yeah. You can also use a fork. I've seen people use a fork that'll kind of poke you. Or you can be nice to yourself and turn the fork the other way so it doesn't poke you. So Bruce W says, can you explain how the feeling of pressure in the front foot during the downswing? Yeah. So basically, as we're reaching the top of the swing, we're starting to get pressure into that lead foot. Initially, it's going to be kind of in the balls of your feet. And then as we're coming into contact, it's going to be moving toward the heel of your foot. So that's basically what the pressure is. So I'm up at the top of the swing here. I'm starting my downswing. I'm getting pressure kind of in the balls of my lead foot. I'm feeling that pressure. And then as I'm starting to rotate my body and I'm pushing into the ground, it's that pressure is moving to the heel of my foot. Now you'll see some players like a Justin Thomas or Ricky Fowler, Patrick Reed, when they're really trying to get a lot of power and they're really trying to drive with that rotation, you may even see them with that lead foot. They'll put so much pressure and they'll really rotate their hips so quickly that they'll actually become airborne off the ground. Now, this is not possible for some players. You know, Clay has this in his driver swing to a certain extent, just a little bit. You'll see him kind of barely, I don't think he completely gets off the ground, but you can see how his foot, it just barely kind of comes off the ground a little bit. He still has a little bit touching though. But that's from really pushing into the ground and rotating the hips as much as possible. So you have to have a certain amount of strength. You also have to be fairly light to do that. So something to consider there, but if you can see that happening in some of the tour players as well. All right. So Brad M says, if I start with my hands low near my right leg, like Clay shows in several lessons, I can swing with all the good motions from the TSG system, lag, rotate hips, kick the clutch, turn the upward, good compression line, and nice straight line release. But starting from the full backswing, I can't seem to get the low hands position to repeat the good swing motions with more speed. How can I? And then it cut off. But I'm guessing you're asking, how can you make that happen? So basically what's happening is there's things that's going on. The reasoning why you're having trouble with that is that when you're here, there's not as many forces going on in the club, and it's a lot easier to rotate from this position right here, right? But if I get up here, it's a lot more difficult to sequence the swing properly, right? So what you need to do is probably work on the move course and get that proper sequence and get that club in the right position as you're coming down, because the club's probably getting in a wrong position. Brad, not sure if you were here to listen to me talk about the move earlier, but basically you're probably coming down steep and or trying to throw this club earlier, square this face too, or square this face too late in the swing. We need to get that face squaring earlier and that club shallowing out so that you can get to this position right here, basically this position right here as you're coming down. What you're likely doing is you're probably throwing that club a little bit early, and then you're getting down to this position right here where this club is already basically released, and you can't, I mean, from there, there's too many forces involved. You're not going to be able to get into that proper position. So I recommend working on the move course, which is the course that I talked about earlier, to get you to be in that proper position, to get the club shallowing out, get the club face squaring earlier so that you can stay in your posture and rotate through contact. So to get to the move course, all you have to do is go to the top of the page, click that house icon. That's going to take you to the home page. If you scroll down the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses that we offer on the website. Then select the move course from there. So Tim H says, Q, missed yesterday's office hours, so I'm resubmitting. Use Super Speed Training with some results, but saw a huge uptick in driver distance when combined with the Top Speed Golf distance course. How my iron contact is suffering. Tips for getting back to hitting crisp irons. So it's hard to say without seeing what's going on in your swing, but I look at your swing on video and just see what piece of the top speed golf system that you're suffering from. Are you is your stable fluid spine off, right? So are you set up, right? Are you set up in a nice angled away position? Are you staying stable up to the top? And are you getting more angled away and opening up when you're coming into contact? If not, then you may want to work on the stable fluid spine, right? Power turn is probably not an issue if you've gone to the and worked through the 20-minute distance fix course. You also may want to look at your lag, right? So maybe you're casting the club. Maybe, with the irons, maybe you're doing that. I would assume that you're not, because that's a part of the 20-minute distance fix course, but maybe you are. I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know. I don't know without seeing your swing. Also, we have our compression line, right? We want to make sure with our compression line that our lead ankle, lead hip, and lead shoulder is all in a straight line here, slightly angled away from the target. And then we have our straight line release. You may be releasing that club early coming through contact, and you may want to work on the straight line release. You may want to work on the move. Like I said, it's hard for me to know without seeing your swing, but I would look at your swing on video and see what's going on there. Look at the piece of the top speed golf system, and also look at the move and see where you're lacking in those areas, and then work on those pieces individually to get back to where you need to go. Those are the things that cover basically all the issues. There's something that's called the 80-20 principle, where 80% of your results come from 20%, basically. So that's basically what's going on. There's a small number of things that drive 80% of the issues in the golf swing. And those small number of things are the top speed golf system and the move course. If you fix all of those things, you're going to fix 80% of the issues. If you're nailing all those things, you're going to have, it's probably more than 80%, more than 80% of the issues in your golf swing. So that's what I'd be looking at. Like I said, it's hard for me to know without seeing your swing. We do offer an unlimited swing review program where you are, where you can send swings to an instructor, and I can tell you, okay, this is exactly what you need to do to ramp up your irons and to improve your iron play. And if you go to our unlimited swing review page, you can sign up for the waiting list there. It's very easy to do. If you go to the top of the page there, click Get a Review, and you go to that swing review page. If there's a spot open, grab it up and gobble up that spot. But typically there aren't any spots open, just because this time of year, we're pretty much all full student loan because everyone's really excited to get, especially right now, right, with everything starting to open up. So fortunately, I don't have any spots available. I don't think Robin or Chris do either. But if you join that waiting list, you'll be on a list of emails where you'll get notified whenever we open up spots available, whenever we open up spots. So make sure you join that waiting list, because I tell you what, I opened up 5 spots this past month, and I sold out my spots in about 45 minutes to the waiting list. So if you don't join that waiting list, you may never ever get notified that the swing review spots are available. So make sure that you join that waiting list, so that way you can get a spot. Or because it's first come first, we send that email out. It's first come first serve. So it's still even possible if you join that waiting list that you may not get a spot. So make sure you join that waiting list. Keep an eye on your email, so that way you can get a spot whenever they open up. So Lee J says too steep ? Not in to out. Let's see here. What did they driver? Yes, Lee. It's hard for me to say without seeing your swing. I don't know. But to me, if I had to guess, if you're popping it, whenever I see someone popping it up, it's almost always because they're sliding forward and they're popping up the driver, is because they're sliding forward and they're getting that low point to be at the golf ball. When you're hitting your driver, you want that low point to be before the golf ball so it can work up into the golf ball. So the difference is if my fist is the golf ball, here's how we want it to look. We want it to come down, bottom out, and then work up into the golf ball. Here's how it looks if you're usually popping up. The club's coming down, it's reaching a low point at the golf ball, it's reaching its lowest point, and then it's getting underneath the golf ball, and the golf ball pops up like that. So that's likely what's going on. But like I said, it's really impossible for me to know without seeing your swing. Look at your swing on video. You got to look at your swing on video, folks. We can't guess what's going on. Feel isn't always real. So we got to see what's going on video. I know it can be painful sometimes to look at our swing on video, but we got to do it if we're really serious about improving, you know. And if you have a buddy do it, if you don't have a buddy to do it, then get like a tripod with a phone mount or something like that to video your swing. All right. So Peter D says, any recommendations for equipment for working on putting and chipping off season? Lots of putting mats out there, but it doesn't seem like they really help. Yeah. So as far as putting is concerned, it's funny I had this in here because I was working on my putting yesterday. So this is just a piece of flat bar. It's aluminum flat bar. It's an 8-inch thick, 1.5 inches wide, 48 inches long. It's aluminum. I got this at Home Depot, I think. And basically what you do with your putting, because one of the most important things about putting is just hitting a ball on a line. Putting is basically just comes down to hitting a ball on a line at the right speed. That's basically what it comes down to, right? So this right here can help you to putt a ball on a line. So if I put a ball on there right here, and it must be a little not laying flat for some reason. There we go. So I put a ball on there like that. Now I'm going to take my putter and I'm going to try and roll it right on this. So I know if it comes off that, I'm not really putting it on a line very well. So here I'm going to give this a try. So you can see there how it veered off to the left. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you are not smoking these. These should be going no more than 10 feet, I would say. All right. So if I hit what would be like a 20 or 30 footer, it's going to stay on there a lot more easily because I'm hitting it so hard. All right. So again, I'm going to give this another try. Try to get this to go right out the center here. There we go. So I got it to go right out the center there. So now what I'll do, now after I got it out the center, I'm going to do something that's called interleaving practice. All right. So what that means is kind of varying what you're doing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and keep this on the rail for as long as possible and try to get it to exit to the right. That's what I'm trying to do. And if I'm unsuccessful, then I'm going to try again. So I'm going to try at least get it past the midway point and then let it exit there to the right. All right, so same thing. So all I'm trying to do is try to get this exit to the right just a hair. But nope, I got to go out the center. So that's my typical miss, is kind of to pull putts a little bit. So that's pretty typical there. Now I'm going to try and get this to exit out the right side. This is the second attempt. That was too soon, so I overdid it. It exited too early there. Let's give this another try. There we go. So that exited like right there. So that took me 3 attempts there. Now I'm going to go to the left side. So I think you get the idea, but I count how many attempts it took you to do that. And I'm telling you, you do this, this is really going to help you to control your line a lot better. Now that's just isolating line. What you can do after that is to control your speed is do something called a ladder drill. This is a little bit tough to do indoors unless you got a longer putting mat. But I mean, I'm just doing this in the carpet in here. But what you would do is, let's say I have a golf ball. Let's see, get that in frame here. So I have this golf ball or a tee right there. I'm going to try and put this ball to that ball, but not go past it. Try to get as close to it as possible, but not go past it. And it doesn't matter as far as direction. Direction doesn't matter here. I'm only focused on the right speed. So here we go. I'm going to try and get that just to roll up to it, but not past it. Ooh, that was too far. So if it gets to it, it's too far. So I got to start over now. That's 0. So let's give this another try. That was really, really close to being really good. So I just need to take a little bit off it. So I wussed out and I did too much. So now I take another ball. Now this is my new ball that I'm putting to. All right. So now again with this shortest one, I have to get it to that ball, but not too far. I'm at 1 right now. All right. So again, oh, that might be too far. Oh, it hit a bump. So again, I wussed out and I didn't get it. So now I'm at 2. So now I'm going to try and hit this ball just short of that ball. Basically, you just keep doing this. So that was pretty decent. I got it to be about 6 inches short of it. So now I'm at 3. And basically, you do that until you fail, or basically you do it until you fail, and that's your number. So you fail if you go too far, if you go past the ball or you hit the ball. That's when you fail. So typically, the best distance to do this starting out is with about 20 feet on the practice putting green. Obviously, you probably don't have a 20-foot putting mat, so a lot of them are like 10 feet. You can do it from 10 feet, but that's a great drill to really help you with your speed control. So it's isolating your hitting it on line, and you're isolating it with your speed. Those are the best for putting. As far as chipping is concerned, you can do similar type drills, because what's really, really important for chipping it is hitting it on the right with the right speed. You can do that very, very similarly. Now, you can't do the thing with the flat bar on the ground with chipping, but you can chip to different holes. So let's say you have like a putting green that's got different holes on it. You can go to the middle hole, try to get it in there, go until you're successful, go to the left hole, go to the right hole, or you can have some tees on the ground or something and chip to those things in the house. So what I'd recommend doing is, try to focus on hitting it on a line to a certain target, right? And vary that target until you're successful, and then vary the speed control as well. So you can do a ladder drill, the same kind of ladder drill. You can do that with chipping as well, and really, really control that speed. So that's why I'd recommend when you're working on things indoors. All right, so thanks everybody for joining me. I will be back here Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great weekend, and I will talk to you soon.